Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I have an absolute pleasure again to welcome two of the greatest guests you can ask for, Mr. ANDREI Martyanov and Mr. Larry Johnson. Both are experts in military topics, geopolitical topics, life topics, history topics. So we will have a lot of things to go through. I have 4 questions of my own. Sometimes there are more questions that come out throughout our conversations, but we see if you have any, you can always put them in the super chats. All the links to find both ANDREI and Larry are already down below this live stream, to the blogs, to YouTube channel. By the way, can I just ask you, Larry, you don't have your own YouTube channel like ANDREI, right?
Yeah, I've started one. It's so you can find, if you go to Sonar 21, I've got the link over on the side. I'm just an occasional, I get the desire to occasionally rant. Andrei's a daily ranter.
Daily. I am by each other day, pretty much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to all the moderators, because I will do my best to really focus today on the guests and the questions. So please be kind to one another. And if you would like to support me, also all the links are down below this video. Your subscription and your likes and sharing the videos means a lot. So let's start with this. I have always long intros, but that's my style. So 5 stages. Zelensky said lately, very recently, that the situation for Ukraine is critical. So he moved from the denial to anger, and then he moved into Bergen, which he stayed, I think, pretty much the longest in this bargaining state, asking for money. But psychologists say that there are 5 stages. So we have 2 more to go. If he already went to those 3, we have depression and we have resignation, which is accompanied by acceptance of defeat, pretty much. And I would like to ask you at this point, gentlemen, whoever wants to start first, go for it. How advanced at this moment are Russians in Ukraine? At this moment, where are they now?
Larry, do you want to start?
Yeah, this chaos that we're observing with, I call it, it's a soap opera, or in Spanish, a telenovela. So I call it as Kiev churns. There is a soap opera in the United States as the world turns. So, but as Kiev churns, and so. One day it's Zelensky speaking to, writing an op-ed in CNN, and then it's Zelensky sitting down with an Italian journalist that, oh, by God, I'm going to fire everybody. Everybody's gone. It's like Donald Trump on steroids. Okay, you're fired and you're fired. And, hey, get out of here. And what people don't understand is when you create this kind of chaos in military leadership, because that's what it's doing. There is now uncertainty whether or not Zelensky will survive. Okay, so Zelensky's at the top, but now you got a second echelon of officers, and then below them a third echelon, and a fourth echelon. So at each one of those succeeding echelons, they're watching all the elephants roll around in the wrestling room, and they're going, you know what? I better just sit quiet and do nothing. Because if I act, and the wrong guy takes over and decides that I'm to blame, that I was doing something to undermine him, or if I don't act, so it creates a real dilemma. So it ends up a paralysis, and it's no coincidence that we're getting that paralysis as Russia is making significant advances in Avdiivka and beginning to cut off the supply routes.
Absolutely. Larry nailed it. And yes, this morning news from Avdiivka, evidently they beginning to not just dig in, because there was a breakthrough on the 2 axes in Avdiivka. Now it's, basically their city or urban warfare full blown. It's also that they are being run under the ground, the Ukrainian, whatever the Ukrainian grouping is there. and they are being dominated, obviously. So it's just a matter of how Russians move. But there's another thing which is happening to the north in the Kharkov area, and there's a Kupiansk direction, and there are some advances there. So and it's just going to accelerate, and it was totally expected. But Larry, absolutely correct. What we see is the soap opera and paralysis, essentially, of this morning. Actually, I read the New York Times. I had to go and spend my hard-earned $1 a week because I need it for my book. And so once I finished, I'm just gonna cancel the subscription. I also subscribe to Washington Post. Oh my God. So, and they write again that what kind of peace deal, can Ukraine, Zelensky get out of Russians? And they just wet dream about all kinds of stupid things. And it's like, there is no deal. There will be just, Russians are just deciding when they're gonna go on the other shore, or basically bank of Dnieper. And the issue of Odessa is now it's in the open, it's clear.
Yeah.
So it's just there will be dictation of the conditions. That's pretty much it. There will be no deal. So, but Larry nailed it absolutely. It's a soap opera. It's complete paralysis of the military political leadership.
So from the psychological standpoint, are we going to see him? Do you think we're ever going to see him in depression? Because that he's in denial, we already know, but acceptance of defeat.
Yeah.
He is in depression. You can say,
Yes.
Zelensky is just, he is completely drugged. I don't know how much cocaine he uses daily, and if it's just cocaine, who knows what he's using. But it's pretty much standard procedure for Ukrainian leadership to be on drugs nowadays.
Yeah.
Lately, she said this on my channel, and we all know the first chip was implemented into the brain by Elon Musk. So maybe he has one of those, you never know. Maybe that's how they run him. Who knows? I mean, everything is possible at this point, right? I don't know. Yeah. So I would like to ask you here, I have this information from this morning that Medvedev, who always tells it like it is, kind of like ANDREI, he indicated that the new capital of Ukraine will be, we say Lvov in Polish, Lviv. And he said this: plans to build a railway line from Spain to Ukraine are the first confirmation that Lviv will be the new capital of Ukraine within the borders of Lviv region. What do you think about this? Do you agree with this? Or will Ukraine even exist after this conflict?
Medvedev is a world-class troll. He loves to poke a finger in the eye of anybody that would put their face close enough to him. And, he's having fun with the Europeans and particularly with the Poles because he knows secretly that there are a number of Poles that would like to take Lvov or Lviv, however you want to pronounce it, under the wing. And look, I don't see how Ukraine survives as a country beyond this. Because, number one, they're now talking that the population is down to 19 million. So, roughly 20 million people have fled. They've gone elsewhere. And they're not. And why would they come back? Because Russia now controls significant areas that were economically critical for Ukraine for many years. And, Russia's not giving those back. Once Odessa is in Russian control, Ukraine's access to the Black Sea is over. And so whatever agricultural products that they can produce to export are going to have to be done over land. And we've seen how welcoming the farmers are in Poland and Romania, saying, oh, Slovakia, yeah, come on, bring all your stuff. No, they're telling them, hell no, stay out, keep your crap on your side of the border. So I think Medvedev is just having fun with it at the moment because I think we're going to see Ukraine enter a death spiral, and it's one that they won't recover from. So it was already one of the poorest and most corrupt countries in Europe. And it's one thing that can be guaranteed: it's going to hold on to that position.
And yeah, in the end, this Polish factor with Lemberg, because eventually Lvov will become Lemberg one way or another, because everybody understands that Poles were, and the fact that this Duda's move, which is like, oh my God, when he says, well, Crimea is a Russian thing, just, okay, here we are now in the bargaining mode now between Poles and Russians, because Poles say, yeah, it's, Crimea, they already said, and Duda, he doesn't like Russians, let's put it this way, but he goes for it, and of course it created a hysterical reaction in Kiev. But obviously Duda is now setting into this bargaining mode with Russia in terms of, okay, we know that in the end somehow the Vostochny aggressor will end up with Poland, no matter how you play it, and Russians don't care about Western Ukraine, like, just do whatever you want to do with it. And I can have very little to add to what Larry says in terms of survival of the Ukrainian state. I don't think so. It's a dead man walking now. So it's over pretty much.
But here I would like to understand something from your expertise. And this might be quite lengthy intro, but it's important. So since the end of Cold War, the number of armed forces in the European countries decreased by 2.5 times, from 3.4 million troops in 1989 to 1.3 million troops in 2022. Now, as we know, Poland is having conscriptions. The Ministry of National Defense of Poland wants to double the number of reservists to 200,000 people for military exercises. Germany is preparing for a long-term confrontation with Russia. UK, same story. NATO is doing the trainings with the anonymous attacker who is Read Russia. So funny, right? It's hilarious, the whole script. But here I would like to know, as someone who really is not an expert, and that's why I bring guests of your caliber to understand this. Is all of this created just to, three things I see: create another reset like they usually do, the bankers, World War I, World War II, so we're gonna reset this all. Second, is it to create fear to control the populations of those countries? And third, is it another wonderful opportunity, excuse my language, to suck up the resources, money, and just corruption? What is the reason? Is there ever even going to be any conflict, or this is just like the boiling pot for nothing?
Well, I would like to believe that it was part of a plan. That something this stupid was actually planned. But I think there's an enormous element of people looking at a very short-term picture and reacting. What was particularly telling is when the United Kingdom recently proposed an expeditionary force. We'll send an expeditionary force to save Ukraine. I have correctly compared the British military to a bedraggled, that means someone that's a disheveled dog, a little poodle with no hair, no teeth, and a bark that can't bite. That's Great Britain right now. And they're going to go on the attack. Good luck with that, guys. They can't even get their aircraft carriers out of port without them breaking down.
Just unbelievable. Yeah,
I know. The other, 3 weeks ago, two of their minesweepers run into each other. I mean, this is the British military have become Monty Python wearing uniforms. Okay, they're a comedy team. And what is shocking in all of this is that they genuinely believe that they represent something of a threat. The only threat they represent is to themselves. I mean, I have a good friend here in the States, but he's British by birth. He was a member of Special Air Service, SAS, some years back, and he sent me this scathing denunciation of what's going on in the UK, using some very colorful British slang that have 4 letters that can't repeat in polite company in reference to it. So what you see transpiring throughout Europe is these people are delusional. But what would you expect out of governments that believe and accept the notion that, well, a man can declare himself to be a woman and they're a woman, and men can have babies and breastfeed? So when you've got this kind of mass delusion going on across society, this nonsense about the military is just one more example of the craziness. I'll let Andrei finish up on.
Yeah, I agree. But Anya, what you said also to a degree is correct, because what we observe here, the industrial capitalism is being killed both in, and again, I'm repeating here, that's not my thoughts. Michael Hudson, incomparable Michael Hudson, wrote about it with super imperialism and killing the host. Financial capitalism, the ability to make, those financial legerdemain and add zeros on the Wall Street while producing absolutely nothing.
Right.
It killed elites, it killed people, it killed the mechanism which was developing the statesman. And as a result, as Larry correctly stated, they believe their own BS, so to speak, and you have people, indeed, you have Annalena Baerbock with 360 degrees. Or Liz Truss, who wants to fight for the independence of Voronezh, ancient Voronezh Oblast in Russia. So you have those people, they are delusional. And when you look at ANDREI, you're absolutely correct. They try to do this thing, to kind of bark and do this, Wizard of Oz thing. Bundeswehr. I made a video yesterday when I was collecting about the how Russians, correlation of forces and means. And Bundeswehr in 80s, Soviets, Soviet army respected Bundeswehr. It was a very serious force, competent. Now you look at them, it's if Monty Python famous dancing, which is of course one of the greatest skits from Monty Python. But then you have Bundeswehr. They have 80 planes ready to fly in Luftwaffe. And guess what? They will have probably 40 by the next year. And then the United States will shove down their throats. Guess what? F-35. Do you know what it means? The end of the combat airspace in Europe. That's simple as that. Yeah. Don't look at those Rafales and everything. French cannot produce them. You can count them on fingers of one hand how many they produce a year. So there you go. Everything is just Ministry of City Walk. It also comes, but no, it's a rank and file dancing. So it's unbelievable, but they do this huff and puff, and things of this nature. But we have, of course, now we have dual, so to speak, seal on that, which is, of course, Russia's nuclear arsenal, and now proven a total domination of the conventional battlefield against the best NATO proxy ever. In fact, is by extension, VSU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, were essentially NATO force. It was never hidden that NATO trained them, equipped them, and there you go. And guess what? We know what happened.
The other thing that's going on here is the economic system, both in Europe and the United States, is predicated in large measure on having an external enemy that is used to justify these enormous expenditures on defense infrastructure that doesn't work. The F-35 is one of the biggest boondoggles in the history of boondoggles. It's a very expensive aircraft to operate. It's not a reliable aircraft to operate in combat conditions. And yet that's becoming, quote, the standard. So you remember back when the Soviet Union fell, the U.S. defense and intelligence community was really in a quandary. They're looking around and saying, "Oh, where's the enemy? Where's the enemy?" Well, and they didn't really want to take terrorism seriously at that time. I was downsized when I was at State Department in '93 because a terrorist threat, that's passé as well. And I'm not suggesting it was a great threat, but it took until 2001 when all of a sudden terrorism became the organizing principle. Why? Well, because Russia wasn't a military threat and China wasn't a military threat, and they couldn't gin them up in order to justify, hey, we need to increase our defense budget. We got to go up another 10, 15%, 20%. And so go back to like 1991, 92, the U.S. defense budget was like $240 billion, $250 billion. Now it's approaching $900 billion. And yet the United States has fewer troops, fewer ships, a lot more officers. By God, that's one thing we're really good at producing, lots of officers. And so when you got all these officers, they got to have something to do. One of the things they do, hey, we're going to conduct our annual military exercise with Russia as the secret enemy, Operation, Steadfast Resolve, or whatever this nonsense is that's currently underway. And so it's a self-licking ice cream cone. It's not based upon strategy at all.
But here I have, excuse me, here I would like to understand also from the logical standpoint, when they are destroying the economies in Europe, ultimately, in my opinion, they want to create the war economy. So they want to focus on the war because that will be the solution from those factories that are closed, from those businesses that are shut. The economies are sinking.
They cannot
the farmers
do that.
are right. So now they will redirect that into the conflict. So how the regular citizen can feel at this moment, what I'm trying to understand is this just empty barking and taking money on the side from all those deals and resetting it? Or is this going to be really that stupid, that delusional, that it will take those countries and those innocent people who don't want to be part of it to war, to be destroyed?
No. They are not going to war, really. First, they cannot do the wartime economy. What they mean by wartime economy, that's probably going to be a grift again. Just to give you an example, even before the special military operation, Germany had the highest commercial electricity prices, second in the world and highest in the developed world. It was, I believe, 29 cents per kilowatt hour. Just to give you a comparison, in Russia it is 4 cents. So they had it, more than 7 times higher. Now we know it grew like what, twice? So the economy becomes unsustainable any way you look at it. Even if you want to do the, for example, this transfer to the war rails, so to speak, you cannot do that. Each Leopard, which of course has its reputation utterly destroyed in this special military operation, is actually quite crappy tank between us. And you cannot produce it, otherwise it will be worth its weight in gold. And how do you gonna do it? That's the problem. In the end, you have to have energy. You have to have technical expertise, which, for example, Germany, which is considered the locomotive of the European Union economy, doesn't have anymore. They absolutely killed the country. So, and that basically repeats itself in different, to different levels everywhere. Look at France. It's like, what can I say? If not for the nuclear deterrent, which was created by at de Gaulle's behest when they had a true genius national leader, what can they do? Take Airbus away from them and Renault, and well, what's left?
Yeah, the United States. I always like to use movie references. So there was this movie a few years back about the coup in Chile by Pinochet that overthrew Salvador Allende. And this was a serious movie. This was not intended to be a comedy. But at one scene, as the Chilean Navy's closing in on the presidential palace, here's Salvador Allende running around with a helmet on his head. And he calls his aide, and he goes, "Hey, call the people to the streets. Tell them to grab their firearms and come defend the palace." And his aide goes, "Sir, but you ordered the confiscation of all firearms, so they don't have any." So that's essentially what the West has done. During World War II, when that war started, and Yamamoto correctly noted that the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor awakened a sleeping giant, because the United States was able to turn on a dime, take all these factories that were producing automobiles, and suddenly they're producing armored vehicles and tanks and artillery pieces. They took all these plants that had before been producing civilian clothing. All of a sudden, they're producing military clothing. They're producing boots, ammunition, rifles, everything. The United States back then had the ability to make everything. And it was not dependent upon some foreign exports in order to sustain that. Today, well, our boots and shoes are made in Vietnam, Malaysia, over in Asia. Ditto for the clothing. Steel, yeah, that's been farmed outside the United States too. There are still a few factories left, but the United States is not the steel producer it once was. Manufacturing plants, well, a lot of those are now in Mexico, some are in Canada, but they're not in the United States. So the point of all this is the West can sit there and say, but like Salvador Allende, call the people to the streets with their guns. Yeah. Call those factories to get started and start making this stuff. They don't exist. And so this kind of magical thinking that the politicians can speak and this stuff is just automatically going to happen ain't going to happen. And what they have failed to come to grips with is that Russia never dismantled its industrial base. Russia maintained its industrial base, the same industrial base that helped that was principal in defeating Nazi Germany, because they were able to produce everything they needed or a significant amount. Yeah, they got some support from the United States through Lend-Lease, but by and large, the Russian industrial capability that existed in World War II is bigger, better today than it was 70 years ago. Can't say the same for the United States or for the United Kingdom or for Germany. Not a single country in Europe has improved their industrial base.
And speaking of movies, as much as I abhor Michael Moore, I cannot stand the guy, but Canadian Bacon was a masterpiece of comedy. That was his best movie, and about the CIA looking for the new enemy after the end of the Cold War. Yeah. So they find Canadians. Let's designate Canadians as our enemies, and this was hilarious comedy. But yeah, that's what they desperately try to do things. But again, if you look attentively, which is Larry correctly states, who runs today a United States? How many of the real captains of industry, the old money and the old industrial capitalism, do you have on people who run the country? None. Most of them are people into this, by the way, self-leaking ice cream industry, which is IT. You have those Amazon people, which creates a lot of moving some products.
ANDREI, the soy boys.
Yeah, you have all those you have those financial guys. Look at them, lawyers. Nothing wrong with lawyers per se, but they cannot run the country. And you look at these people. Look at Biden's administration. You don't have there a single professional who ever ran anything serious, especially in terms of the complexity, things like industrial plant. Who's Mr. Blinken? He's political lawyer. Jake Sullivan, national security advisor, the guy is clueless. I mean, and you look at these people. Kamala Harris, she is what? She is was attorney, and show me the guy who was running some kind of the major. Well, you know what happened to Boeing. You know, they wanted to turn Boeing, their crown jewel of American industrial engineering genius. They turn it into the money-making, purely making money operation. And guess what? They killed Boeing now. The company is in a deep, deep trouble. And how it will survive is yet to be seen. They will try, obviously, you know. But yeah, that's what we have today. And how can you fix it? You can't.
So can I, because I want to end this with this image that came to my mind when I was listening to both of you. And I hope this is really how this will unfold. Let's say we have a movie and we have a fighter that's being trained for a big fight. You know with who? With who? So he's preparing for this fight with the champion, right? Champion. So they invest in him, they buy him the best outfits, they get him coaches, pump it up, the commercials, the trailers, the campaigns, all of this, the money is spent. And then what? There is no fight? The fight is canceled? The tickets are sold, by the way, the tickets are sold. That's how I see it. So I hope there is the fight is canceled, no show.
Well, I think what they were spending their money on, they thought they were spending their money on some 22-year-old guy that was physically fit and in good shape. Then they turn around and look, and actually it's the baboon from the Clint Eastwood movies. Can't, no matter how much you train them, how much you feed them, not going to be very good in an actual fight like that. And let's say it's an overweight baboon at that. So this is the West seems hell bent on destroying itself, and they're making decisions that are so out of touch with reality that what I fear is it's going to require some sort of devastating military confrontation in which, for the first time, the United States tastes its own blood. And is sitting in cities that have been ruined by bombs, that someone does to us what we've been doing to the world for the last 60 years. Because once you get a taste of it, then all of a sudden you're not so eager to go out and inflict it on others. And I'm afraid that's the only way the United States is going to learn.
This internal strife, which this year becomes also crucial in terms of course, election and all that. We already know the United States right now is a torn country. There is no unity, and we already saw this with the red states essentially declaring that, we support Texas and things of this nature. It's not there yet, and hopefully it will not come to civil war or anything like this. But the split is here. We can see it, we can sense it, and house divided cannot stand. So whatever is going to happen, we have to wait and see. But I wouldn't be as pessimistic as Larry is here, although he certainly has a point. But I don't think so United States can take any more, and what we know, even from what has been leaked recently, just literally a few days ago, that the worst thing the Biden administration is afraid of is repetition of Afghanistan. Not even just inflicting any kind of physical harm, God forbid, to the United States. And I have vested interest not to get something flying into my western coast, so I live here. I want to live, so. But the point is that even what collapse and what is happening right now in Ukraine, United States will try to abandon it, but you cannot abandon it anymore, because it's like this sticky substance. That's it. You got yourself into. And no matter how you try to wash it off, this was different kind of scale, different kind of conflict. Now they are afraid of running away from the Middle East. So it's a combination of factors, and hopefully we're not gonna get there. God forbid, that we get into that hot war. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, I agree.
So let me ask you here. You took me to, I have two more questions. Commander-in-Chief is a statement of authority granted to the president under Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. We know that Biden is barely conscious, whatever creature it is, I don't even know. Who really is a commander-in-chief of United States? I would like to know your opinion. Who really is this commander-in-chief? Not the label, the actual.
Well, no, Biden is the de jure and de facto commander in chief. But within that does not mean he then is empowered to carry out whatever military operations he decides he wants to do. That the Constitution stipulates that it's the Congress that has the authority to declare war. Now, there's been this gray area over the years that led to the development of the War Powers Act, where, like in the case of Vietnam, we just slowly got embroiled in that without any, again, legal authority. And it was only after the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that Congress sort of gave a backdoor authority. What presidents have failed to learn is one of the reasons you always want to get congressional approval, authorization for carrying out military operations overseas is that when they go bad, when they turn south, when people are getting killed on your side and it's becoming unpopular politically at home, you got some political cover because it was the Congress told you to do it and not just following orders. What Biden has now done is just he has no cover. And while there's still congressional support for attacking Iran, these dummies, they're going to learn the hard way. Because the attacks against American bases in Syria and Iraq are not stopping and are not going to stop. And the United States to claim that by bombing 85 different sites, that was proper retaliation for an attack that came from one site somewhere in Syria or Iraq. This notion of collective punishment the United States has eagerly seized upon, and frankly, it's gonna blow back up in our face. So, I think this commander in chief, the reality is right now this president can do whatever he wants, unless Congress intervenes to stop him, or the external events defeat him.
Well, he uses even the pretense of the AUMF, authorization for the use of military force, issued for the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I believe they tried to invoke this thing, which is ridiculous, of course. It had nothing to do with what is happening. So, yeah, it's a mess. I mean, we look at the complete implosion of the American governance as such, because we have this third country which existing within the United States, which is a Washington establishment, and those people have no connection to the reality or to the there is a group of senators and Congress people who are more or less tied to the reality, but majority is completely corrupt, actually. Yes. When Marjorie Taylor Greene stated to Tucker that you think so that any U.S. senator will sell anything, their family for the dinner, she said it's much worse than that. So it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah.
So here, let me show you the question from the viewer, and then I ask you my last question. Why are the West hell-bent on destroying themselves, or is it, as Mahatma Gandhi said, Western civilizations, I think it would be a good idea?
Well, the West has lost touch with its spiritual foundation. That's as simple as I can put it, which is one of the reasons we're seeing a resurgence or rebirth of Russia. You cannot separate yourself from God, and I don't care whether it's Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, but inherent in these religious beliefs is the concept that what you do on earth is going to be held accountable. You are accountable to a higher being for your conduct. Once the West divorces itself from that, and this is not the first time this has happened in history. Some would argue that that is why, what the Soviet Union did. It divorced itself from God, and it ultimately sowed the seeds in a very dialectical way of its own destruction. That's what we're seeing in the United States, because as they divorce themselves from God, the proliferation of single-parent households, lack of children that are properly supervised and raised, decline in educational standards, increase in criminal activity across the board, regardless of race. And on top of it, instead of spending resources to improve the physical surroundings of the people in the United States and to ensure that the children are properly educated and that there is decent infrastructure, the United States has taken upon itself that we're going to tell the rest of the world how to be like us. And by that, we're going to go out and carry out military operations and enforce that. And in the process, spend trillions of dollars overseas, killing people of various races and ethnic groups. And all we're doing is further alienating the world from us. So it's sort of the selfishness, this decision that we're going to separate ourselves from God. That's how we end up destroying ourselves.
I agree entirely, but there is this twist of which I write non-stop for. The best what was in Western civilization have been transplanted to Russia. It's been obviously those famous Petrian start of the 300 years Russia opening to the West with different degree of success. But the fundamental ideas, which Larry says, and can take a look at the definition of the Western civilization as being it's a Roger Scruton, late Roger Scruton, said that it's God of Israel, Roman law, and Greek philosophy. These are three foundational things for Western civilization. This is what you'll find now in Russia today. But there is a 2017 Valdai meeting, Valdai conference, on which Vladimir Putin, you will not find it on YouTube anymore. I posted it once, and he was talking about actually the fate of what he termed a white Christian civilization. Of course, they removed it from the YouTube, but you can look it up. He was talking to the group of youth, and they had young Russian Orthodox priests, the guys from Africa, guys from, and he was talking about, he said, we're not saying is it good or bad. I'm just saying that there is the reality, and it's always, and I write about Russia as arc for years now, basically. And now when you have this stream of the immigration from West, what used to be West, it's just like, yeah, it's coming through. But yes, I agree with Larry fundamentally with this, that once the issue of the spiritual life have been basically, the foundation have been demolished, and we have this absolute, some of it is satanic, the outright satanic things, so, and it's, what can I say?
Thank you so much. I have actually 2 more questions. I try to be very quick with this.
You're good.
First one, you're good. Thank you, because I'm like Swiss watch with ANDREI, always on time. I would like to ask you, who do you think invited Tucker to Moscow?
I think Tucker invited Tucker.
Yeah.
He'd been wanting to do it for a while, and so he'd been making inquiries, and I think he finally got the green light. I would not be surprised that someone from Lavrov, from the foreign ministry, Lavrov or Rubikov, were involved with that. but also somebody in Putin's circle. I mean, look, going back to Oliver Stone, who sat down and did a 4-part interview that I think it appeared on HBO with Putin, and the number of foreign journalists from Chris Wallace to Andrea Mitchell and others, or Barbara Wall, they've sat down with Putin over the last 20 years. Oh, well, it's sort of funny just how people in the United States and the mainstream media are just completely losing their minds over it. Tucker and I I'll call ourselves text friends. We've exchanged texts in the past, and I've heard from him since he's been in Russia, and he's just, he was very, very impressed. He had the same reaction to Russia that I did. Moscow is a remarkable city, and that the people are even better than the city.
Andrei, do you think President Putin invited him or Lavrov?
No, I agree with Larry. It's probably the level of either Lavrov or Ryabkov, maybe even Zakharova, but obviously in terms of when you want to talk to President Putin, you definitely need to have some contact with his administration. Mr. Vaino, who is the chief of which will be equivalent of chief of staff in the United States. He is the guy who runs the scheduling. So, but I can totally accept also the reality, as Tucker himself stated. I wanted to see it for myself too, So he came and he saw and he loved it. Actually, today, Moscow 24 major channel on the Moscow area, they were making report about him, and he's like, he was visiting Moscow restaurants, as you might expect. That's what I do when I come to Moscow.
I sent him a text suggesting that he go to the Cafe Tchaikovsky just off of Tverskaya Street. Great beef stroganoff, incredible.
Wonderful. I can't wait. Next week for me. So let me ask you the last question, and I will ask this question to Andrei first. This is a comment I have received some time ago, and I just want to read it because once in a while I still have comments like this. So let's address it once and for all. What do you... Okay, one second. So let me see here. Yes, this is from Oksana. And she says this. Do you know the real Russia? I am Russian, was growing in SSSR. All the republics of ex-Soviet Union are extremely corrupt. It's in the people's blood. Putin himself is also corrupt. Do you know that he puts in jail everyone who is against the war, even old people? Russia is gone because of him. This war is a big lie, not how we see it. I decided to read this comment because there are still people, a lot actually, who think like this. So Andrei, can you please address this?
Oh no, there are people who think like this. You cannot control. But what is absolute lie is that somebody who is against the war is imprisoned. No. That's the huge difference. The devil is in details. You could be against war anytime you want. You can go and actually, but what you are imprisoned for is for the spreading the rumors and deliberate lies about the special military operation. For example, I can go out with the thing, say, stop the war and things like that. Nobody gonna touch me. And especially you can do, you do as any demonstration in Russia. You go to the local city council or whatever, says, okay, tomorrow we will have this demonstration. Okay, just fine, go. But if I come out and say, this and this guy raped women in the Ukrainian village, guess what? And of course, didn't happen. Guess what? You're going to jail for defamation of the Russian armed forces. And this is the proper measure to take during special military operation. As for whatever this Oksana thinks about the Russia, she obviously is lying. She has no idea about modern day Russia. And so, yeah, she was born in USSR, sure, we all have been, but evidently she hasn't been in Russia in like long years, and she has no clue what she's talking about. So it's basically, it's one of those things where, those comments come. I have people from Ukraine and hanging out my blog constantly. Some of them are working for the obviously famous Tsipso. So it's deliberate. So it's kind of trolling. And yeah, corruption exists in Russia too, absolutely. But yeah, basically rumors about Putin being corrupt have been grossly exaggerated, speaking, using Mark Twain's famous expression. So yeah, there are problems. Russia has problems as anywhere else, but there's nothing beats corruption in Ukraine or Moldova, or let alone those Caucasus. It just corrupt utterly around there, and especially Middle Asia. So, but it's in the nature. But yeah, I don't think so. Oksana has been to Russia in a long time.
Thank you, Andrei. Lara, do you want to add anything to it, or?
Yeah, well, so the story's told. It may be apocryphal. Jesus is standing in front of a sinner, and he says to the crowd, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And here comes this rock, smacks the sinner right in the middle of the head. And Jesus looks out and says, "Mother, stop it." So, the Virgin Mary was the one without sin that cast the stone. My point in this, every country just needs to look in the mirror at itself. The United States is famous for its self-righteousness in condemning the human rights abuses in other countries and the lack of judicial due process and corruption in elections. You know what? The United States needs to shut the hell up, fix its own house. Our corruption is on par with anything that I've ever seen overseas in any other country. When you've got Joe Biden with clear evidence of corruption, and with Hunter Biden, and the sexual deviancy that goes on both parties. You had that one congressional staffer posting the fact, he was having homosexual sex on top of one of the hearing room desks, and they don't prosecute him. So my point in all of this is, and then look at the way the people who walked into the Capitol. They didn't go in, storm it. They didn't break things up. They didn't call $1 million worth of damage. They walked in part because they were invited in. It was a setup. And yet they're being jailed like anything that Alexander Solzhenitsyn described in the Gulag Archipelago. So my point in this is, it's real easy to sit back and try to criticize what's going on in Russia. You know what? Let the Russians take care of the Russians. Let the Americans, the people in the United States, take care of the people in the United States. Until we've got that genuine city on the hill where we're filled with all the virtue and prosperity, and there's no poor among us, and no children are being sexually or physically abused, and there's not this inequality between classes, then if we're in that position, okay, maybe we're in a position to tell other people, give them some suggestions on what they could do. But until that time comes, we need to shut the hell up. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I see already the time for Andrei to go, because he's always so sharp with the time. I very, very much appreciate you both coming on today and answering my questions and giving me so much of your energy and time. Thank you everyone for watching us. Make sure to hit that like, it helps the channel, subscribe, share the video as well, and to follow both Andrei Martyanov and Lara Johnson. All the links you have already attached down below the live stream. And until next time, I hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot, Ania.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Andrei.